Hi, I'm John Molesky, host of Dialogue. Welcome to the set of the program where I just conducted a discussion on immigration with my colleague here at the Wilson Center, at least temporarily. He's here on loan from university, Karthick Ramakrishnan. And Karthik, you're working on this project that talks about the increased political nature of immigration policy, and particularly how a lot of it that used to be always at the federal level is now at the state and local level. And I want to ask you about the big mythic question. Why in a nation of immigrants that has this gigantic welcome mat standing in the harbor in New York, that has prided itself on being this place that people come to, how has the narrative concerning immigration become so negative?
Well, one thing that's important to note is that we are a nation of immigrants, but we're also a nation of laws. And we've had laws that have been passed in the past where you have tried to solve the problem of having enough workers to do the jobs that maybe people born in this country are unwilling to do, or unwilling to do at a certain price. But at the same time, those laws have not kept pace with the demand for that labor. So you've constantly had more people working in this country than we give legal authority to work in this country. So you've always had this built-in demand for illegal immigrant labor, and that's a tension. And we're not a country that is a totalitarian state where people snitch on each other, and we're easily able to tell we don't have a national ID card that tells you that you have the right to be here.
Although some would like to see us have that one.
Right, and to some extent, state driver's license are beginning to get there. Mm-hmm. That if you're going to be traveling even by train in this country, that you need to have a driver's license to show your legal authority to be here. But that is something that it does strike at the heart of American identity. I think most people would agree that we are a nation of laws, of a democratic process. It doesn't matter what religion you are, it doesn't matter what language you speak. But you have also had this tradition in American history over time, especially as the number of immigrants grows, that you need to establish English as the supreme language. I mean, some of this concern about language was there during the World War I period, in which Teddy Roosevelt was decrying the amount of German influence in the United States, the number of societies and clubs that were promoting German culture. So you've had these moments in the past, and I guess one solace is that you don't see the kind of extreme violence today as you might have had in the past, but you do see a lot of efforts to try to get more enforcement in the interior, to get more raids happening, to get people deported, even if they've been in the country for many years, even if some family members are born in this country and other people are here illegally. There is at least among some quarters, and this is part of what my book talks about, is trying to figure out where are people most sympathetic to some of these circumstances and the least sympathetic to some of these circumstances.
This is when you have this discussion on an electoral politics level, it's a tough discussion for the GOP currently. Right. The trends don't favor them as far as however you isolate a group of voters, Latino voters, Asian American voters, whatever the case may be. Are there any shining lights in the Republican Party that are speaking in ways that could reverse this trend?
You would think that someone like Marco Rubio would be a potential spokesperson to try to get Latino voters in. But the thing is, Marco Rubio is actually quite conservative on immigration. And there have been polls by groups like Latino Decisions which suggest that outside of Florida, he doesn't have much name recognition and would not necessarily add that much to a presidential ticket. But the kinds of voices that are trying to be more moderate and trying to think about the long-term interests of the Republican Party include people like George W. Bush, Karl Rove, Jeb Bush. These are all people that see the danger in having a harsh tone and a one-sided tone to immigration opinion as part of the Republican brand. And they see the importance of trying to win over voters that might hold a particular position on immigration, Latino voters that don't like the kind of rhetoric that's coming on immigration, but that might otherwise join the Republican Party because they're conservative on social issues like abortion, even on some of these birth control issues.
One thing that all three that you mentioned have in common is none of them are running for office right now.
Right. In some ways, it's easier to be be concerned about the long-term prospects of a party.
When you don't have the short-term election day staring you in the face.
Right. Although to George W. Bush's credit, when he was running for re-election in 2004, he did mention a path to citizenship as something that he was interested in. Of course, the second he mentioned it, he got hammered by members of his own party who wanted him to stop dropping hints that he would be in favor of an amnesty. But that is a struggle that the Republican Party is going to have to deal with, and it's in some ways even more extreme today than in 2004 because there is no natural leadership within the Republican Party. Right now what you're seeing is a struggle for the heart and soul of what the Republican Party will represent moving forward.
What kind of pushback do you get from conservatives or Republicans when you speak about this issue and you talk about the theories and your research? I know I witnessed one in a session here at the Wilson Center where someone took issue with you in looking at this through a partisan lens.
Right.
What kind of response do you get?
I think there's two kinds of responses. One response might be from someone who is strongly partisan on say, the Republican side, saying that the only question is illegality, and even Latino voters would support trying to clamp down on illegal immigration. But most of the evidence actually suggests otherwise. That even though you might think that the majority of Latinos are actually native-born in the United States, you would think that they would share this restrictive sympathy on immigration, but they don't. In fact, they would like to see some kind of legalization. But the other kind of reaction I get is that it's not a Republican or Democratic issue. In fact, you have division within the Democratic Party as well. Now, this is something that and I've done research on this. So I think it's appealing to think that both sides are vulnerable on this issue. But in fact, the Democratic Party was divided more in the 1980s when you saw some of these amnesty provisions that were being proposed. But there's much less division now in the Democratic Party. Even labor unions who were uneasy about legalization programs are now most labor unions are fully in favor of legalization programs, even though you might think that might lower the wages of labor.
Right.
Many labor unions see immigrants as the future of the union movement in the United States. So it's not an equivalency that we're finding here. Also on the Democratic side, you don't see people that try to challenge incumbents and try to kill them, I guess, politically during the primary process based on their votes on immigration. But you do see that on the Republican side. You have instances where there's extreme pressure that is brought down on moderate legislators on the immigration issue by potential primary challengers.
Well, thank you, Karthik. And to those of you watching us here on YouTube, if you'd like to hear a fuller discussion with more of Karthik's research and opinions, come to our website, wilsoncenter.org, find the tab for TV, radio, multimedia, and follow that, and you can find the complete dialogue program. Thanks.